Hi, my name is Yi-Xian. I'm the CEO of EtonHouse. I'm one of the two Singaporeans, or maybe the only Singaporean, who's a product of the Singapore education system, but I lead an international education group. EtonHouse is 100% owned by our founder, who in this case is my mother. EtonHouse was already imprinted on me because I grew up with it. You can say it's the sibling younger than me. And so I asked myself what would happen to the company if something happened to my mother. My life's purpose is to make as big of an impact as possible through EtonHouse and by touching lives. I went to neighborhood school in Singapore for secondary school. I went to Outram Secondary School. After I finished my army service, rewinding a bit, I had interned in EtonHouse as a teaching assistant. And the path for a lot of family business people is to come into your family business when you graduate from university. But for me, I felt that after my teaching assistantship, that you're the boss's son. So I had no anonymity. Even for lunch break, right? When you sit down with your food, people don't want to sit with you. It's kind of like this thing where it's like, oh yeah, that guy is here. So I don't blame them one bit, and so I realized that, if I'm going to have any kind of normalcy, I would want to work somewhere else and to be able to have a skill set before coming back to my family business if I so choose to. I started out my career in the US. I was in investment banking as an analyst in Credit Suisse in New York City. So after graduating from college, I did 2 years in investment banking, and it was miserable. I mean, my worst work week was 120 hours. There are 168 hours in a week, so I barely slept. I think I slept like maybe 20 hours the entire week. It was not a good experience. But yeah, it taught me a lot about corporate finance. It gave me a sense of what a multinational looks like. It gave me a lens into corporate finance at a global scale, from the very bottom. And from there, I worked in a hedge fund for 3 years in the US. So it was not easy getting that job, and you live and breathe by the markets. So every week, I had to learn about a new industry. To do research, a very deep research on something that I knew nothing about. After 5 years working in the US, and after studying in the US for about 3 years before that, I happened to be in Singapore on holiday. And my mother, she's a kind of person who lives to eat. So she swallowed a fish bone. And so I had to rush her off to the emergency room. And my mom is a very strong person. So seeing that dragon lady suddenly seemed so frail. Actually, for a son, I think was actually, it shook me quite a bit. So I asked myself on the long flight back, the almost 24-hour flight back to the US, this whole up in the air moment, what do I do with my life? Because at that point, I'm earning very good money on my own 2 feet. I have a life in the US, I've got a circle of friends. I mean, Singapore really is a holiday destination I come back to once every 2 years. So at that point, I realized that, look, maybe my path should be more there. I can touch more lives there. I can make a deeper impact. So yeah, after 1 year, I wrapped up, and at that moment, I kind of asked myself, am I ready to come back to Singapore? So for me, actually, I wanted to see the world. So I felt I had never really traveled around the world before. So I knew America, I knew the US, I knew Singapore. I felt I didn't know anywhere else. I didn't even know Europe, actually. Europe was the part that started it. So I signed up I told my new boss, my mom, I said, hey, can you give me a year? She said, oh yeah, sure, take a year off, yeah. So I traveled around the world, and this time around, it's this gap year, right? It is my money, so I can do whatever I want. So I spent the first 2 months in Europe. So it was a very typical summer, see Europe. Then I spent the next 2 months in the Middle East. And that was very eye-opening. So I had a ticket into the continent, okay, the subcontinent, and I had a ticket out in about 2 months' time. So landed in Cairo, exiting in like Amman, Jordan. There was a moment somewhere, I was thinking of somewhere in Mexico, cave diving, and then I get a phone call from my mom going like, hey, what title do you want? It's a very family business problem. So I approached it in a very professional, I think professional way. I said, oh, you know, I really don't know anything about leading schools, call me an ops manager. Then she was like, huh? Okay, ops manager. The next question was, how much you want to get paid? So I said, just pay me what you think is reasonable. Yeah. So I show up for work, I collected my staff pass, which is a very Singaporean thing. America doesn't have staff passes. So I collected my staff pass. I went to work with my parents, I remember, my mother that day. That was an interesting experience, like going to school, but it's like going to work. So, for more than 10 years, I didn't experience that. And I show up at the workplace and everyone looks at me funny. Then I'm shown to my cubicle and then I sit there. And then, well, it was a bit awkward. But then I think I got swept up with the work. When I came in, I was given a portfolio of schools to look after, and almost immediately an issue came up where the principal had like a problem, and then the solution was to write a letter to parents, and the principal was pushing for this sentence to be put in there, and then and so it came down to a fee increase. And so the principal wanted us to commit to a cap on fee increases. And for me, I thought it was reasonable at that time. And from my mother's perspective, from my uncle's perspective, we don't know what's going to happen. So by putting a cap in there, if let's say a black swan event happens, it could be a 0.1% event, but why would you commit to something where that locks you in? And so we don't want to make promises that we can't keep. There was a difference in opinion, and I remember it was one of those conversations where I stormed off, she stormed off, and that kind of conflict was very good to have in our first year of working together, because it helped us to actually realize that, look, how do we actually deal with disagreements? And today it's very unique because most people will never work with their parents. In my case, yes, I have a chance to work with my mother. And I think for both of us, it's a learning experience for both parties. But and you both have to segregate your professional self and your personal self. But I think it's very unique because, and I say this about my uncle and my father also, where having seen another slice of a person, you see more of the whole. And that's something which is a unique, you can say it's the bane of someone's existence when it's a tough time. But the reality is that when you take a big step back, you see the whole person, you just don't see like one snapshot.